Now, our first speaker, Anna Boustead, who's actually the hostess of the ICIN program. Anna talk was she's going to give some sort of background to where we're at from an Indigenous research perspective space, but her preference will be to talk about and ask you actually if the types of questions that you have wanted to generate after the last couple of days. The second speaker, Anna, needs no introduction. Firstly, thank you extremely for all the you've done. And Anna has obviously had a lot on the last couple of days. She's not going to give a presentation as sort of outlined about challenges and things. She's going to invite your questions and try to respond to them. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Jeremy. Yes, so today, because you've just had 2 days of a bit of a deep dive into North Australian savanna fire management, and really appreciate you coming all this way to attend the Savannah Fire Forum over the last 2 days. I hope you found it helpful and that it'll breathe life into lots of new partnerships between North Australia and your home countries. So given that I feel like you've had a pretty good introduction into what the North Australian savanna fire management sector is, so I was just wondering if prefer to use this time for you to ask any questions about the sector and about the network and the forum. You're welcome to do so.
Okay, thank you. I think one question that I just had, I think coming up, listening to all those wonderful conversations was how really sustainable is the projects on their own without other support, like maybe from government?
Well, we describe it as one tool in the tool belt. So it's not a silver bullet solution to community development or to environmental damage or to poverty. It's one way, one thing that you can do, but it's not the only thing. So it should be considered as part of a whole of country program, looking at what needs to be done in your community, on your country, and what and guided by local people. So that's sort of we don't want savanna fire management to be seen as a silver bullet solution to everything. It's one good thing that can give rise to lots of benefits that we've seen in North Australia. The other thing I would add is it's not without risk and it's not without cost. It costs money to employ people, to employ rangers, to do that work. It costs money to send helicopters up to drop the incendiaries to across the vast landscapes, if you're looking at very vast landscapes. So, it's not without cost. It can be very costly, and it can also be, in some ways, there are risks involved because you have a good year, but you may also have a bad year. So like any form of other type of farming, it should be considered in the same way. So many of our groups, they will bank a proportion of their carbon credits to keep them aside for a rainy day or to keep them aside for a bad year. So there was one year in 2020 here in Australia when we had a bushfire crisis, and that was brought by climate change. We had very extreme fire weather across the country, including across North Australia. So that year was not a good year for many of our members. but then the next year was a good year. So a lot of our members produced a lot of carbon credits the next year, but it's just, it should be considered like any other community-based business. You need to weigh up the risks, the costs, and the benefits, and look at how they all stack up. And if it will work for you, then that's great. But not all groups are in a position to absorb that risk. Many groups are, but that's where the governance systems are really critical. So you need to make sure you've got strong governance systems that enable good decision making about your business, because it is a long-term business activity, really.
Thank you. Okay, I forgot to introduce myself, Kelly Bindo from Zambia. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Johnson Dokosho from Namibia. I do not know what is the amount of money paid per ton of carbon that is being paid to the community, but from what when I look at last time, it was not so attractive. Is it different here? Are they getting better than the average that everybody else gets?
Yes. So on the market today, so there's different. In Australia, we have our own Australian carbon credit units that are regulated by the Australian government. So they have a high degree of regulation. They on the spot market, they are worth, those carbon credits are worth around $35 a tonne. But for the Savannah fire management credits, and particularly the Indigenous owned Savannah fire management credits, they can fetch up to from $50 to $55 a tonne on the voluntary market. So that is selling to buyers who either approach the seller because they want to purchase Indigenous Savannah fire management credits because of all the other benefits they bring other than carbon. So they're willing to pay more. So we call that the premium. We're in a premium market. It's a niche market. So the market that our members sell to is not generally the high volume, big oil and gas producers. Although some of the earlier sales were in that area. Our market has definitely moved into a niche specialized market that's looking at ethical, supporting ethical and environmentally sustainable products and services. So a lot of our members have sold to airlines and really, I guess, those businesses that can't that can't lower their emissions any further, they need to offset. So like an airline, they're often big buyers of Indigenous carbon credits. Also the tourism sector, because they can, they know that their customers will be more likely to support their product if they've offset through Indigenous carbon credits. So it's very much a niche, high value premium market that we are in, and what we will be learning to do better in future is to promote what is an Indigenous carbon credit, and to explain how it's different to other carbon credits.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So I'll follow up on what he's said. Kanembwa from Zambia. My question is, I guess you can feel free to pat yourself on the back as you answer this a bit. I've understood that the recent assessments of your methodologies and your systems has revealed some reinforced confidence in the integrity of your methods. That's what I picked up in the earlier on presentations. And say if Zambia wants to come up with a similar Zambian carbon credits unit system, what do you think sets you apart from these other markets where we know that there are rumored controversial methodologies that they use, or things like this. What is it that sets you aside from them, in your view, that we can pick as low-hanging fruits and possibly adopt as well?
I think integrity of the method is really critical. So even in Australia, there are some methods with low integrity. There are some carbon methods that literally count the carbon credit if you turn the lights off in a factory. So that for me, that has a low integrity because that factory should be turning its lights off anyway. So there's the fundamental thing in when it comes to carbon is the concept of additionality. So it has to be additional. If it's going to happen anyway, then it can't be counted as a carbon credit. So if you've got a rainforest that is not threatened by logging, like this is going to some of those red schemes that were talked about in the media recently, they should only receive a carbon credit if they're directly threatened in some way. So it has to be additional. It can't just be, it needs to be an additional carbon benefit. That's the whole concept behind a carbon credit and a carbon offset. So it has to be a real offset and additional. There's been a review of the carbon industry in Australia recently, and that was the reason. The impetus for that review was more of a political one because the last government put a lot of emphasis on using offsets to address Australia's emissions reduction targets. So it does go to how the offsets are applied too. But for us, the integrity lies in the fact that the credits come from a genuine avoidance or storage of carbon in plants or soils that would not otherwise occur without the revenue for that credit that enables the fire management. So that fire management program would not occur to that degree without the revenue from the carbon project. So I think that's where the integrity lies in unpicking all of that. And there's a lot of hard work that goes into the designing the scientific method, but then also the policies that sit with that scientific method to describe how it's applied as well.
Thanks, Anna. Sam Johnston from the International Savannah Fire Management Initiative. First of all, thanks for including us in your forum. It was an amazing experience for us all. I know I speak on behalf of all of the international guests. They found it incredible. So thank you very much for that opportunity. I guess my question is two maybe, but one is that you talked about governance being absolutely critical to the success and of this endeavour. I was just wondering, you as a network, what kind of requests do you get from your members to support the governance development? What kind of tools and support do you give to your members to help them develop their governance? And with a view, maybe what kind of things might be useful to export overseas? And maybe if you have time, a little corollary to that is, we hear a lot about how it's based on traditional knowledge. And I just wonder what kind of measures you take as a network to kind of record that or make sure that it's known or people are aware of what the traditional knowledge is in this work.
Yeah, okay, there's a lot in that question. Thanks, Sam. So governance, first of all, governance is locally determined. So we don't really involve ourselves in local governance decisions. We do provide information to groups to help them make informed decisions. I think a lot of the governance arrangements are different depending on the place and the situation and the land tenure, and that can all those things can have a bearing on the governance. I think there is definitely a need for startup funds to assist groups to get their governance systems ready for holding a carbon project. because it costs money to, you need to get independent advice for your particular situation at a project level. That'll cost money. So it needs to be resourced. You need some startup capital there to assist you to do that on the ground. And sorry, there was another question about traditional knowledge. Traditional knowledge is held by the people within our network. So they own that knowledge and it sits with them. And the application of fire is a cultural practice that they hold. So so we ask the traditional owners that hold that knowledge to describe that. Yeah, so that's not part of our role. We just really provide a space for, as you saw the last couple of days, we just provide spaces for our members to articulate that themselves in their own way. Does that make sense? But yeah, I think it's it's very important that Indigenous people are in control of their own traditional knowledge and the application of that, and particularly when it's in a market, that's valued.
Thank you.